This is The Bandwagon, a podcast about baseball, Texas, baseball teams in Texas, and how hot it is when you go to visit baseball teams in Texas. I'm Hannah Keyser, a baseball writer at Yahoo Sports, joined as always by Zach Crizer, also a baseball writer at Yahoo Sports. Hello.
Hello. So if the listeners couldn't tell, you're in Texas.
I'm in Texas.
Where in Texas are you?
Well, I'm currently looking at a window, and if I was forced to just guess, I know where I am, but if I was forced to just guess, I would say, I don't know, purgatory, hell? Like, it's just parking lots and highway as far as the eye can see. And then also to the side is what appears to be a water park. I'm in Arlington. I have never been here. We will actually talk about that later. I'm in Arlington to see the Texas Rangers. I came straight from Houston. As I texted you this morning, Arlington makes Houston look like Paris. I am sure that Dallas has cool parts, things to recommend it. You told me you like Dallas.
I do like Dallas.
I don't know that to be true because I've never been in Dallas. Like, I'm sorry. We're going to critique two teams very quickly. Both the Rangers and the Braves moved their ballparks. I actually don't know if the Rangers were ever in downtown
The Rangers
Dallas,
did not move their ballpark. It's in the same place.
I know it's in the same. I don't know if they were ever in Dallas. Okay, both the Rangers and the Braves do not play in the city that we most associate them with. They play somewhere on the outskirts of that city, such as Arlington. The Rangers are actually associated with Arlington. I don't really know where are the Braves? They're in Cobb County. I know that.
Cobb County, yeah.
I don't know what.
I mean, it's like in between Atlanta and
more
Marietta.
Narrow municipality it is. And it's a bummer. I don't like when baseball teams do this. I know that there are like more local, more legitimate sort of reasons for disliking, particularly the Atlanta Braves one. Like they're just sort of taking this ballpark, this baseball club away from the people who most regularly went. But even if it's always been on the outskirts, like the Rangers in Arlington, it's a real bummer to visit. There's nothing to see. I don't know anything about what Dallas is like. I can't get a coffee anywhere because there's nowhere to walk. I'm not going to just like get in my car, drive out into the highway and try to find just like a iced coffee or something. So I just consume whatever they have like in the lobby.
Well, let me give you this as my endorsement of Dallas. It's going to be a real roundabout way of endorsing Dallas. I like Dallas, even though the first time I went there, I had my laptop stolen from my hotel room.
You have told me this story, and I completely forgot.
Yeah, I'm not making this up, a ring of thieves who paid hotel maids to steal things from hotels. And it was, the ring was later busted and shut down, and they sent me back my laptop, and it was completely useless. But so even though that happened, was burglarized in a hotel in Dallas, I enjoyed Dallas. So that's
what were you doing in Dallas that was so much fun that it outweighed that experience?
I mean, I wasn't doing anything specific. I just went there to hang out and have some food. Yeah. It's a long story, but I was close enough to Dallas anyway that it was the biggest city. Yeah, that was nearby.
Do we know? Okay, so you said that Ring of Thieves has been apprehended, so I don't need to worry about whether or not they've expanded their purview to Arlington.
Well, this was like more than a decade ago, but they were apprehended very shortly after my laptop was stolen. Yes,
I do spend a lot of time in hotel rooms, and now I have a new fear. But I do take my laptop with me, I guess. I'm only ever here to work. All right. We're going to actually get back to the whole ballpark, Arlington, also the Rangers, the Astros, the other team I was seeing. First, we're going to run through a little bit of banter. And most notably, but we have the least to say about it, Wander Franco has been placed on the restricted list. Wander Franco and the Tampa Bay Rays have mutually agreed that he will go on the restricted list. He is not currently with the Rays on their road trip. They are in San Francisco. They left Sunday night and he did not go with them. This is a very tricky topic to talk about, both because it is a sensitive subject and because there's very little substance at the heart of it. So pretty much everything we know for sure is sort of the ancillary things that surround something that we do not know for sure. So we know that Major League Baseball has launched an official investigation into Wander Franco. We know that he didn't travel with the team and that he's on the restricted list. We know, per the Associated Press, that the Dominican Republic Attorney General's office replied to questions there, saying there are investigations regarding that matter. So the tricky part is what we want to say about what that matter is. Basically, Sunday, there were social media posts started to circulate that I don't even know if it's like correct to say that they alleged something or if they just sort of alluded to something. They alluded to Wander Franco being in an inappropriate relationship with an underage girl. And there was like a lot of sort of fallout on social media from this without there being, as far as I could tell, like a more definitive, precipitating report or something.
Yeah, it was hard to even find the original source of this.
Right.
It very quickly became a lot of speculation and a lot of references to the post without anyone verifying the post or having any information about whether it was legitimate or where it came from or anything like that. So that's why we're treading lightly here. We don't know. I think it's pretty clear from the officials you talked to that the league doesn't know, the team doesn't know how real the allusions or allegations are. And so everyone's kind of working on figuring that out. It's obviously a really sensitive and serious matter that if any part of it is true, that, I mean, we're talking legal issues, not baseball issues. So that's where everyone is just trying to figure out where the post came from, what the truth of the matter is. And once someone figures that out, then there will be, there will either be more or less to say about Wander Franco and whatever effect this has on baseball. But
so I thought that actually The Athletic did a good job today spelling out where we could go from here. And I thought there's just the one thing I kind of wanted to call out was, so right now he is on mutually agreed upon restricted list. He doesn't have to be on the restricted list getting paid, but he is getting paid. He's accruing service time. Major League Baseball has the power to place players that they are investigating on administrative leave, which is what happened with Trevor Bauer sort of during the investigation. Yep. They use that when these issues become public before they have been fully investigated, because they're sort of that's what's the tricky thing is right now, is that like he can't really be with the team. It would be a huge distraction. It would be problematic. But they haven't completed their investigations. That's why he's on the restricted list now. If they place him on administrative leave, that implies that they've met some burden of proof. And so that would indicate that it is trending towards there being something substantive at the heart of this. That doesn't necessarily imply that there will be punishment in the form of a suspension, but just that the league has sort of found enough to justify putting him on administrative leave. And that's like a 7-day thing, but it can get extended. That's what happened.
And it was extended in Bauer's case over and over and over again.
Over and over and over.
Yeah, and it's worth noting right now, MLB has not taken any action at all. The restricted list agreement was between Franco and the Rays.
Yes. And they are on a road trip, and they said that he would not be with them for the remainder of the road trip. I am just going to Google real quick because I feel like we should probably know when they're
August 22nd.
August 22nd. Okay, so by August 22nd, either he will be playing with the team, they will have agreed to extend the restricted list, or MLB will be able to place him on administrative leave. Okay, that's probably more time than we even should have spent on that. This is not no smooth way to transition out of that to like cool baseball. But Michael Lorenzen threw a no-hitter. That's fun.
Recent Phillies trade acquisition, Michael Lorenzen. He'd previously been on the Tigers. He was a longtime member of the Cincinnati Reds. He got to the Phillies. He threw... this is a man... I wrote about this after the no-hitter. He came up as a pretty good prospect for the Reds, and the first season that he tried starting didn't really work out, and they moved him to the bullpen. And the Reds kept him in the bullpen for the entire time he was under team control. And when he hit free agency before the 2022 season, he was like, I'd like to try being a starter. And he was accepting only like lesser offers than he could have gotten to intentionally try to be a starter. Did that with the Angels in 2022. It wasn't great, but he tried it again this year with the Tigers, went better. And he made this is the real crux of what I want to get to, because I think it's one of the cooler stories in baseball. He made the All-Star team pretty much because the Tigers are not great and they needed someone to make the All-Star team. So Lorenzen got the All-Star nod in early July, found out he was an All-Star. And in the immediate aftermath of that, he himself was like, I don't understand why I'm an All-Star. I've got a mid-4s ERA. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And since that moment, he's got an ERA under 1. I mean, he's been unhittable in the aftermath of that. That was several starts against the Tigers.
Quite literally unhittable sometimes.
Yeah. Then he got traded to the Phillies, and in his first start with the Phillies on the road in Miami, he went 8 innings, which was tied a career high. And then in his next first start at home in front of Phillies fans, he just, threw the no-hitter. So really a glow up for Michael Lorenzen, and apparently someone should have told him he was an all-star years ago. We might have had a crazy story on our hands.
I love that. I love the power of positive reinforcement. That's a much more interesting takeaway. I had 2 takeaways. One, I was reading Jason Stark at The Athletics. He does, these sort of like wild and wacky stats from various events, or not from various events, from large chunks of the season sometimes. But he did one off of just the Lorenzen start. Lorenzen was once a 2-way player. He started 6 games in center field for the Reds in 2019. Actually, in 2020, prior to there being bigger news, I was trying to write a story about 2-way players, and Michael Lorenzen, I think, was maybe the last player I spoke to before everything got shut down. I was like, hello, let's talk about trying to be a 2-way player. And then I never used that interview, and instead spent a lot of time on the phone with epidemiologists.
Yeah.
So he was once a 2-way player. He's not a 2-way player anymore because it's very hard. Shohei Ohtani is very good at it. And this allowed for some of those very niche crossover statistics like that we most frequently get with Shohei Ohtani, where it's like the only person to do these, collection of unrelated things. But I thought this was such a weird... Okay, Jason Stark writes, he's the last player to make at least 6 career starts as a position player, any position, and then pitch a no-hitter, was Bob Lemon for a team that may or may not have been in Cleveland at the time. They're the old Cleveland team name. He started 12 games in center field in 1946 and pitched a no-hitter in 1948. To that I say, what? That's more than I expected. The fact that there's one other, I'm shocked. I'm not like, wow, I can't believe it's been so long. I'm like, who's that guy?
He was a very good pitcher for a while, yeah.
This is always my reaction to these very niche statistics. They're like, can you believe that no one has done this in so long? I'm like, that's such a strange collection of specific things that I would have guessed no one had ever done it before. He has a whole list of players in the division era with at least 7 career home runs who also pitched a no-hitter, and there's a handful of them. And that's surprising to me. I would have guessed none. If you had said to me before the Michael Lorenzen thing, how many players have made at least 6 career starts as a position player and pitched a no-hitter, I've been like, I don't know, 0? No, 2 at least. And the other big thing that people have been talking about in the wake of Michael Lorenzen's no-hitter is that he wears Vans.
Yes.
Have
you ever worn Vans?
I have not ever worn Vans. And in reading about them, they seem to have a real gatekeepy culture, so I'm glad that I haven't attempted to, because evidently you're only allowed to wear them if you're from Southern California or know how to skateboard, and I am neither, so it's good that I pose at a lot of things when it comes to fashion, but that's probably a bridge too far.
Skateboarding in Southern California-ness is not
I don't
in your
love
wheelhouse.
Super flat sneakers. I really enjoy shoes, sneakers specifically, and I like when players have an interest in fashion. And yet, for some reason, the level of fascination with Michael Lorenzen's Vans is surprising to me. I think I don't have the correct appreciation for Vans culture. My only insight into Vans culture has come via stories about Michael Lorenzen's no-hitter. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of culture here.
Yeah, there were several stories about the Vansness, and I am also not from Southern California, and you would not catch me dead on a skateboard, because if I were on a skateboard, I would be dead. And so I also don't super relate, but I do like that he wore this custom thing. You know, he had to get these custom made. It's not like Vans makes baseball spikes. So he got them custom made and wore them, and I like that he is showing his personality this way. I just don't super relate. The one other fascinating stat from this, I don't know if you saw this, there are 4 players from Michael Lorenzen's high school in Fullerton, California that have ever played in the majors, and they have now all thrown a no-hitter.
I did see that. Yeah. Okay. I have definitely talked about this before. I saw that as it was happening, and I read that stat out loud to Jake, my husband, and then I said that is the most extreme example I have ever seen of, again, I should look up the name of the scientific principle because I reference it a lot, that like any one crazy thing happening is super unlikely, but the range of things that we would consider to be super unlikely is so vast that actually a lot of them will happen. You know, like, for instance, like that one thing happening. Okay, 4 dudes from his high school made the majors. They've all thrown no-hitters. The percentages of that are like infinitesimal. But what if you said like people born on the same day as him, people born at the same hospital as him, people whose names are anagrams of Michael Lorenzen, like the range of coincidences that we would find outrageous includes so many different possibilities that like one of them happening is not indicative of anything other than like we love coincidences.
Yeah, the day Baseball Reference Play Index adds an anagram finder, we will officially be too bored with baseball.
That would be crazy, though, right? You would be like, what?
I would not know what to do with that information, but
think about how many baseball players there are. At some point, someone will be an anagram. It's like the monkeys typing Shakespeare. That's what it is. It's like at some point, someone will be an anagram of somebody else, and then they will do something that is like a parallel. Like, again, no offense to Jason Stark, but he had like all of these wild and wacky stats in his article. And the one about guys who have done two-way things is interesting because I found it very interesting. But a lot of them were like, lots of the no-hitters in Phillies history have come either in the first home stand or the first season or the first full season of a guy's career, or Aaron Nola made the next start. And I was like, all right, this is just, yes, if you like, you can find a through line. It's like if you put everything that's ever happened in baseball on a cork board, you could find strings between them because they're all playing baseball. They have a pretty major thing in common.
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else? Oh, yes. I was going to say, is there anything else we wanted to talk about before we get to the AL West? And this next one is an AL West thing. So actually, let's table the Justin Verlander as a diva thing till we get to the AL West, and instead talk about Joey Votto has a question.
Joey Votto has a question. So Joey Votto, Cincinnati Reds first baseman, legend, internet hero, asked Twitter, or X, whatever. He said, you get an entire year of major league plate appearances, approximately 650. You, as in you, a normal person. How many hits do you get? How many walks do you get? How many gulp hit by pitches do you get?
And what did I text you when you texted me that you wanted to talk about this?
I have no recollection.
You don't? I said that everyone is vastly like overestimating how many hit by pitches they would get. You would get one hit by pitch because once you got hit by a pitch once, you would back the F up from the plate. Like, in addition to lacking the ability of a Major League Baseball player, you would also lack the comfort with standing in against Major League velocity. And you would probably be like, I think people are vastly underestimating how scary, in addition to difficult, it would be to stand close enough to the plate to even have a chance at getting a hit. And I think, one, maybe 0 hit by pitches. Like, I think unless they're throwing at you, I think you're going to like your instincts to protect yourself and back further up the more you see the velocity would take over.
Okay, so there were a couple like strains of how people responded to this. I would say among people who accepted the premise, some people were just like, well, I'd swing once, throw out my back and never take, but like, let's assume we're actually taking 650 plate appearances for some godforsaken reason. Among the people who responded to that, there were basically two strains. There were the people who I would say don't know enough about baseball who were like, well, I'd get like 3 hits. And I know that sounds really small, but like, no, you wouldn't. You'd get none. But then there were the people who know enough about baseball to know they wouldn't get any hits, but then didn't think about it hard enough to think of the strategy, which is just never swing. You would never swing. If you actually wanted to do well, you'd never swing. And you would get some walks. Then there were the people who were like, well, I just stand close to the plate and get hit by the pitches. And it's like, no, you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't.
So, the thing I think this would come down to is how comfortable you could make yourself look in the box. And over 650 plate appearances, I think you might gain a level of comfort or at least be able to feign it. You know, the most famous recent example of this is Robert Gesellman, the Mets pitcher who in the mid 2010s had a problem with his non-throwing shoulder. He's a pitcher. Non-throwing shoulder, couldn't swing, was not allowed to swing. And he took quite a few at-bats where he knew he couldn't swing, his team knew he couldn't swing, but the other team did not know that. And he got walked several times. Now,
wait,
obviously,
wasn't there an example in spring training that you wrote about someone who was
Miguel
nuts?
Vargas on the Dodgers. Yeah, he could not swing this spring training. Spring
training's
a little different.
Walked.
And he had like a 500 on base percentage.
Yes.
But that's spring training. It's, guys are just working on stuff. I kind of, we'll set that aside. This is both a pitcher who, on the range of people who have hitting skills like normal people, pitchers were the closest. But he was a Major League Baseball player, so he didn't look like a moron standing in the box. He was a tall man with muscles. Like, he looked like he could do something. They just didn't know that he actually could not do anything. So he stood in and got walked several times. He bunted for a hit once, I think. So this is the last thing. I did not see many people saying they would try to bunt. And I think bunting is your best chance. If there's a situation where no one would ever bunt, such as 2 outs, no one on, and you bunt, you might, you got to be at least a little athletic to run to first. But you might be able to squeak out a hit that way. That's the only way I think anyone's getting a hit. Especially
if, and we're not going to get into the there were a lot of people who were like, well, I have follow-up questions. I need to make this scenario more specific. We're not going to get into that. But especially if you had 650 chances and you tried bunting in all of them, you would probably, it's like the reason people don't bunt for hits more is because your success rate on bunts is going to be very low, but it's probably 1 in 650, if not like 2 in 650. I just think people thought they would get hit by pitches more. I'm going to not totally crib, but a little bit crib. When I was in Houston, there was a TV guy asking players about this. I'm not sure if it was for professional reasons, but I heard him having this conversation with several people. And the baseball players think we would get a lot of hits. They were like 10 to 20, which is wild. Do you think that that's because they just can't imagine being as unathletic as we are?
I think that's probably just like they figure that they're underestimating their own level of excellence.
Right. Well, I bet it's that they are imagining someone who is very bad at baseball, but on the level that they have seen them play baseball. Kind of like you were saying with like a pitcher. Exactly. Like they are envisioning who's the worst guy I've ever seen at the plate. But like the normal people are so much worse than the worst guy Jeremy Pena has ever seen take at bat in a professional setting.
Yeah.
That's why they are getting it wrong. They're like, yeah, I saw a guy once. He was really bad. He got like 4 hits.
I don't think there's any level of practice you could give me to where I would be able to swing a bat and hit something going 95 miles an hour.
Right. It actually, now I have like a lot of follow-up thoughts about this. Maybe we should do a broader investigation into this, because it's true. It does make me think about the fact that, like, have baseball players ever watched total normies try to do anything baseball-y? Like, have they gone to the batting cages and just watched, like, 15-year-olds who don't play take batting? You know what I mean? It's like, because it's like they have seen so many levels of baseball, but presumably at all of them, they're only watching people who actually do it somewhat competitively. Like, even if, it's like we always get stories of guys like going back to their high school or something in the winter to train. But even then they are watching high school baseball players. They're not watching me, a person who never even played softball after like age 7. They would be blown away by how bad I am.
It does make you wonder who, like, what their mental comparison is. But yeah, that's, send us your answers. Tweet us, tell us what you think you would do, and we will ridicule you if you're being self-confident.
Do you remember when, during the pandemic layoff before baseball restarted, I tried to learn how to pitch?
Yes.
And we should do more with that. But I tried to learn how to pitch, and then it got kind of waylaid by the fact that, like, the baseball restarting was very complicated in a pandemic. But at one point along the way of me learning to pitch, we enlisted Mike Maddox, then pitching coach of the Cardinals, now pitching coach of the Texas Rangers, to critique my pitching. And I sent him a video, and he was blown away with how bad it was. Do you remember what he said? He was like, "You look like you're pushing a shopping car." Like, he was like, he was like, "It's so unathletic looking." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not an athlete." That's what it makes me think of. Like, he was sort of like, Sure. This person doesn't know how to pitch. Let me, like, watch them pitch." But then he was like, "You don't even look like an athlete." And I was like, "I'm not an athlete. I'm a writer and a podcaster." So yes, it would be like that, where they're expecting an athlete, but someone who doesn't know how to play baseball. And instead they're getting people who are not athletes at all.
Yeah.
All right, let's play a game. I am seeing a new stadium this week because I have never been to the Rangers' new stadium. And I threatened to make the game just a list of stadiums, and you tell me if I have been to that stadium or not, because I'm very bad at remembering which stadiums I've been to. I did make that list. So if we get to the end of this podcast and we have some time to fill, we can play that game. It will go very quickly. I will just say the name of a stadium. You will say yes or no. But the actual game that I have is based on the fact that I can never remember if it's Globe Life Field or Globe Life Park because they kept that part but changed one of the two, or changed it from one to the other.
They kept the sponsor, changed the name. Yeah.
Exactly. They just differentiated it only by that. So this game is called Park, Field, or Stadium.
Oh, no. Okay.
I will just tell you about a ball playing facility, and you will tell me if it is park, field, or stadium. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. When the Rangers first arrived in the Dallas area, they moved into what was then a minor league ballpark built specifically so it could be expanded to a major league capacity to better attract a major league team. From 1972 to 1993, the Rangers played at, without a roof, which sounds awful, Arlington.
Oh,
now you have to tell me which one it was.
I know. From Stadium?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Arlington Stadium. Okay, question 2. The next time the Oakland A's play home games in Vegas, it won't be their first. In 1996, while waiting on renovations to the Coliseum, I did not realize they had renovated that at some point, the A's played 6 games at a minor league stadium known as Cashman
Field.
Yes. Did you know that one?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, not because of the A's thing. I've just heard of that facility before.
You're definitely going to know this one. The Braves currently play at Truist Park, and everyone knows before that they played at Turner Field. But before that, they played at Atlanta Fulton County
Stadium.
Yes, 3 for 3. All right, maybe I made this too easy. Before they moved to Milwaukee, the Boston Braves played at the same stadium from 1915 to 1952, and the Red Sox also played there during the World Series in 1915 and 1916 because it was bigger than Fenway. It was called Braves.
Ooh. That's actually not the thing I thought you were going to say its name was, so that's not good. I'll go Braves Field.
It was Braves Field. You're so good at this game. Wow. Before Minute Maid Park and even before the Astrodome, the then Colt 45s played at Colt
Stadium.
Yes. Wow. Okay. This is too easy. And then after they played there, they dismantled that and moved it to Mexico. Strange. Before Philly's Connie Mack Stadium, which was before Veterans Stadium, before it was known as Connie Mack Stadium, it was Scheib.
Oh, I've heard of this a lot, and now I'm trying to remember if it was. I have two in my head, and it's like, I think it was Park.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, now the name of like a sports gear store in Philly that has like vintagey things. Okay, getting them all right, man. The iconic multi-use facility in Pittsburgh was Three Rivers
Stadium.
Oh man, this is too easy. There were apparently multiple iterations in St. Louis of a facility that hosted both the Browns before they moved to Baltimore and the Cardinals. And I just love this name because it's so Cardinals way.
Yeah.
Sportsman
Park.
Yeah. Damn, you're gonna go 10 for 10.
I could have gotten the whole name of that one. I knew that one.
Okay, this one is not a park, field, or stadium, so it's something else, but I had to include it. Because apparently, from 1886 to 1889, the Washington Nationals, also known as the Statesmen and Senators, played at something called Swamp Poodle.
Oh, God, I have no idea. Swamp Poodle. I mean, the only other word I can remember that I can think of that used to signify baseball playing places, which I think we should bring back, actually. There was obviously the Polo Grounds, and so I'm going to go with Swamp Poodle Grounds.
It was Swamp Poodle Grounds.
Let's go. We should bring this back. There should be more grounds.
We have two more to go. The Seattle Pilots existed for 1 year before Bud Selig bought them and made them the Milwaukee Brewers. But for that one season in 1969, they played at 6.
That's the name, 6?
SICK''S.
Oh,
6?
That sounds like a field, but
no, it's a stadium. 6 Stadium. Is that a horrible name?
Stadium? Yeah,
this is horrible.
No wonder they moved.
And then our last question. The Texas Rangers' current home is Globe Life?
This one's field.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Wow. You did 10 for 11. That was really good. I am impressed. I would say that I get the Texas Rangers' current home name correct 50% of the time.
Do you know why I actually remember that one? Because the old one was not known as Globe Life Park for most of its time in existence. It was known as the Ballpark at Arlington.
Yes.
And so it kept the park. It was always park.
Oh. When I was mapping myself here, got it wrong. But fortunately, they're like right next to each other. As they so often are. All right. And that takes us to what we're going to talk about. But first, we're going to take a quick break and come back with more on the Rangers and then the rest of the AL West. Okay. So we are going to talk about the reason that I am in Texas. I have this one hair and it's really annoying me. You can leave this in, even though it's an audio medium. We're going to talk about the reason that I have spent like a week in Texas, where it is just like global warming personified all the time. And that is because the AL West, which was already pretty interesting, got even more interesting at the trade deadline. And then it got less interesting, but we're still interested. So
it got interesting.
It got different. I saw the Angels play the Astros in Houston, and now I am seeing the Angels play the Rangers in Arlington. The through line there being the Angels, who we thought would be so interesting. And we probably already talked about this on a podcast, and if not, you already know it. They did not trade Shohei Ohtani at the trade deadline, and instead they acquired players. They acquired Lucas Giolito. They acquired CJ Cron, Randall Gitchett. Oh my God, I just forgot how to say his name. Say his name for me?
Randall Grichuk.
Grichuk. Oh, okay. They acquired Lucas Giolito. They acquired CJ Cron. They acquired Randall Gitchett.
No.
They acquired...
No. Gitchett. What? That's a totally different name.
Why
Say
do
Gritch,
I like Gritch?
Like, Grichuk.
Grichuk. I knew it when I was I've seen him. I've spoken about him this past week. We're not gonna. Never mind. They acquired players. They acquired Lucas Giolito. A while ago, they acquired Eduardo Escobar, which I kind of forgot about until I saw him. And they're going for it, and it's not working. So, okay, I booked this trip because the Angels did not trade Shohei Ohtani, and instead they were going for it. And at the time, they were like 3 games out of the wild card. They were playing well. Everybody was like, this is their year, maybe. And then the Rangers got Max Scherzer. The Astros got Justin Verlander back. The AL West looks very interesting. I was like, let me go see them all. The Angels have not been good since then. They are not going to make the postseason. Should we start with the Angels, even though they are the middle of the division? Well, they're the bottom middle of the division. But let's start with the Angels, because that's why I'm here, which was to find out, did it work? And it didn't.
No, the Angels have gotten sad.
Yeah.
So they acquired most of their trade guys early. They didn't wait till the day of the deadline, which was smart because they had a lot of ground to make up. They needed to be better sooner or whatever. So they won some games after the Cron and Grichuk trade, leading up to the deadline. And then from the day of the deadline on, they have been terrible. I mean, they had a long losing streak right after. They sprinkled in a couple wins, but now they're on this road trip and are getting just demolished by the 2 best teams in their division. And they're pretty much toast. I mean, you can see how this is trending by the fact that Shohei Ohtani is skipping his next start because of arm fatigue. We've pretty much fallen into Shohei Ohtani protecting his general livelihood ahead of free agency at this point, and that's kind of the death rattle of the Angels.
Yeah, we'll probably talk more about Shohei Ohtani even next episode, because I haven't written whatever it is I'm going to write off this trip specific to the Angels yet. But I did have to write something because it was so definitive. So I came here thinking I'll go to 6 games and then I'll recap how I feel about the Angels. And instead, after the first 3 games in Houston, they lost 11-3, 11-3. And then even though they won the last game 2-1 with Shohei Ohtani hitting the decisive home run, it was just like, oh, never mind. There's not like a, what's the vibe? Like, the vibe is bad because they're bad. Their postseason odds currently are 1.1% according to Fangraphs. So they lost 11-3, 11-3, and then won 2-1 in Houston. Then they came to Arlington and they lost that first game very quickly, 12-0. And we'll talk about the Rangers and what Max Scherzer did. But after the game, manager Phil Nevins talked to the media, and I have not seen him do most of his post-game recaps because I haven't been around them. But I would venture that this was the maddest Phil Nevin was post-game. He was... he said that there was a lack of focus from the beginning. There were a couple of errors on defense and the pitcher not backing up first. So, and he was just he said the thing that managers sometimes say, which is I can forgive sort of physical errors, but not mental errors, and feels like they're making a lot of mental errors, which again, we don't really have to read into the vibes because 1% playoff odds. So it's not like we're oh, I don't know. How are they feeling? They're probably feeling like they're going to sit at home in October. But even if we sort of set aside what we can see in the numbers, it was really striking that they would be unfocused. And that, this is, if they were going to make the postseason, if they still had hope, this would be such an important road trip. They're playing 2 teams in the division. And even though the Angels themselves, sort of even when they made the decision and around the deadline, even when they made those decisions, they had no hope of winning the division. But one of these 2 teams is not going to win the division, and then they will be pushed into that wild card fight where the Angels are going to have to emerge victorious if they were going to make the postseason. So they should be so locked in during this road trip. And that also speaks to the point you made about Ohtani skipping his start. Oh, if they're not the most motivated they've been, everybody bearing down, coming together, giving dugout speeches to rally to take down these 2 behemoths in the West, during this road trip, then like they don't really think they're making the postseason. You know?
I mean, I am skeptical of locked inness and all of that. I mean, they got one hit and each pitcher they put in gave up at least 4 runs. Like, it's not, it's not like being super focused would have helped them win last night's game. But, I understand the way that you have to motivate your team and keep them engaged. But the Rangers, Ezekiel Duran, I'll pull him out of a hat. He batted 6th for the Rangers last night. He's not an everyday player for them. He fills in at multiple positions, but he's gotten pretty much a qualifying amount of plate appearances this year. His OPS is 810, and if he were on the Angels, he would be just absolutely the second best player. Not in the lineup. Like, maybe Mickey Moniak is close. Like, it would, and he's not in the everyday lineup for the Rangers when they're at full strength. I mean, it's just not a good team. They're trying. Yeah. Trout is hurt. Paramanasian, the GM, did everything he could to put together some like veterans who have half an idea of what to do, but it's just not a good team. You can focus all you want, and Phil Nevin, for all of the ways he seems to have at least kept this team moving in the right direction, he's also intentionally walking every hitter on the other team who has half of a clue what to do. So that's not helping anything. I think he's been bamboozled by everyone intentionally walking Shohei Ohtani. It's like, no. There's no one like him on the other teams. Yeah, right. You don't have to intentionally walk anybody. But it didn't work. It's a gambit. I'm glad they tried it. I think they made the right choice for their fans, probably for their organization, and for the entertainment value of the sport. It didn't work. There's no, you don't have to be mad at the players for not being focused. It didn't matter if they were focused. They're just not as good as the Astros or the Rangers.
That is, this is like, what is the meme? It's like, spend 6 months working on this story and they just tweet it out. That's how I would feel about, I spent 6 days working on this story and you just said it. That's the problem, Julia. It's I'm kind of like, I came here being like, I wonder what the vibe is like. And you're right. It's like the vibe is like, they don't have enough talent. They really don't have enough pitching. Lucas Giolito is going tonight and he's been bad in his starts with the Angels, which they needed him not to be because he was there. They really needed pitching, and then they went out and got pitching, and they got it early, and they acted quickly, like you said. And then it's like even the correct decisions they are making are not panning out, and at the root of all of that is just like a talent gap.
And there's some organizational effect there in that pitchers who they acquire tend to get worse there than they had been elsewhere. I mean, you can see it with Tyler Anderson, who's in their rotation, who was just kind of a league average-ish, good innings eater for the Pirates and some teams before last year. Last year, he goes to the Dodgers and is amazing. And then he shows up with the Angels this year, and now he's worse than he's ever been. It's like, well, okay. There's the same sort of issues where it's both talent and a lack of history of making talent better.
It's hard to make your team really good on the fly. It's similar to what happened with the Mets. It's like, it's hard to make your team really talented on the fly because even if you do bring in a lot of talent and you also are trying to fix the farm system results or the player development results or the sort of analytics or the coaching system, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you could try to change that stuff, but the results from that aren't going to come for a while. And so if you started to change something and brought in an influx of major league talent the same year, it's probably not going to work out that exact year.
Fast. Yeah.
They got one hit by Max Scherzer and some relievers, but mostly Max Scherzer.
No, just one reliever. Martin Perez finished off that game after Scherzer.
Max Scherzer has been so good since he got to the Rangers. He's 3-0 with a 1.80 ERA in his first 3 outings for Texas. he like the only hit he gave up was a infield single that was raced on a double play. He had hit a season high, I think 11 strikeouts. That's how good the pitching has been. On the flip side, I enjoyed this stat that they told us in the press box last night. Eduardo Escobar pitched. The Angels brought in a position player to pitch because they were bad and losing, and they already burned through a lot of pitchers. And that was the 10th time that the Rangers have faced a position player this year, which is the most among all teams because their offense really good. I was talking to Marcus Semien before the game, and we were talking about Bruce Bochy. What's he like? Blah, blah, blah. And Marcus Semien said, I don't think any of the teams he won the World Series with were as talented as this one. That is true. Like, that's not even like a spicy thing to say. Like, the Rangers lineup is incredible. They pummel other teams. And they're a really fun study in how, like, better offense makes your pitching better in some way. It's which is not to say that, like, Max Scherzer's not better because the offense is better here than it was in New York. There are probably other things going on. But when you're putting up 12 runs, it's, like, really easy on your pitching staff. You can, like, do things like throw the ball over the plate and get a lot of quick outs or strike out a lot of guys. Max Scherzer looks great. It's fun. He now gets to be Justin Verlander's rival again instead of his teammate, and perhaps
they wanted
better
to do
suited to that.
Yes. Yeah. I want to just talk about the Astros purely in terms of whether you think this Rangers insurgent season is going to, like, look, the Angels are going to make the playoffs. Or not the Angels. Sorry. The Rangers are going that would be breaking news. The Rangers are going to make the playoffs. Like, they're a very good team. That's not really the concern. Do you think they hold off the Astros for the division? There's 3.5 games separating them right now. The Rangers are ahead. And the Astros have not been at full strength health-wise for most of the season. The Rangers have had their own issues. Corey Seager has missed quite a few games, but overall they've been a little healthier than the Astros on the hitting side. Yordan Alvarez is back. Jose Altuve has been amazing since he came back from injury a little less than a month ago. Kyle Tucker has been amazing the entire time. Do you think the Rangers hold this off, or is this going to be a great season that still ends up in, like, a tricky wild card situation?
I think it's like a feature of the number of games that we have left, and so I'd have to, like, sort of plot that out a little bit more. You're right, Jose. Like, they're back. The Astros back at full strength look a lot more intimidating than they have for most of this season. Like you said, Altuve and Alvarez, I think they came back on the same day, but been back for a little less than a month. Over the last 2 weeks, Jose Altuve has been the second best position player in baseball behind Matt Olson. We already talked about how good the Braves are, so we don't have to get into that. But I think this is the thing. It's okay. People always say, you're going to get another philosophical take from me about baseball. People always say, like, the best team doesn't always win in the postseason because the team with the best regular season record sometimes gets eliminated early. And to that, I always say, there's nothing special about 162. Like, if we played fewer games or more games, a different team would finish above the other teams, especially in a division where there are two particularly good teams going at it. And a lot of it has to do with, like, sequencing of when guys got hurt and when they played certain games. And so I really think over, like, a long enough runway that the Astros could overtake the Rangers, but I don't know that they will. If that, like, I just think that the Rangers are like so strong right now that they have built up a tremendous amount of wins. I mean, they only have like a 3.5 game lead, but they have 71 wins. They're like on a really, like, I don't know that the Astros have time to catch them if both teams are healthy now, which they relatively are, and both teams are playing well now, which they are. It's kind of like what happened with the Dodgers and the Giants 2 years ago, where it's like, I mean, that was even more interesting and more extreme, but, like, where it's like you could win a lot of games and still run out of time to catch the people who are ahead of you. I am very interested in whether or not the Astros' recent historical postseason dominance carries them through even, like, a shortened wild card series? Like if they will they just get eliminated in the wild card, or will it be like, oh no, this is a team that's really good in the postseason and they're just gonna steamroll whoever they face in the wild card? Because that is more fluky. But the whole postseason is more fluky, and they're really good at that. So it goes the other way.
Yeah, I will believe the Astros getting eliminated early in the playoffs when I see the Astros get eliminated early in the playoffs.
That's what I mean. Like, it's like, I know intellectually that if they get bumped down to the wild card, that their chances of getting eliminated go up because anything can happen in a short series. But it's really hard to imagine them not being their best once they get into the postseason, because that's what they know so well, and what the Rangers do not know so well, because this is a little bit unexpected for them. I think that this is what they intended, but maybe earlier than earlier better than they intended it. It's going to be fun. I can't wait for Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer to face each other. Should we talk about Justin Verlander being called a diva and then for some reason feeling the need to take to X to respond?
I don't know if we...
what if you're just like, no, we shouldn't talk about that?
I think we might run out of time if we don't talk about the Mariners next. So, but Justin Verlander... Justin Verlander, apparently, an anonymous player told the New York Post that Justin Verlander was a diva, seemingly because he didn't fit in that well with his teammates, which has been true everywhere, but also because he critiqued the analytics department with the Mets. And to that, I say, maybe he was right.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other team in this division that we need to talk about is the Seattle Mariners, who had a play that actually kind of nicely encapsulates their recent history. Julio Rodriguez, you probably saw this, robbed a home run, and no one in the stadium realized he had robbed the home run. He held it in his glove and started walking back toward home plate, and everyone was like, is it a home run? And it was not. He had the ball in his glove and broke it out with a cheeky little grin. And I would say that this is like the Seattle Mariners trade deadline, where they sold Paul Sewald, the closer, off to the Diamondbacks and just generally did things that made it look like they were losing this season. It was slipping away from their grasp, going over the fence. And then they were like, actually, we're going to win a lot of games now. And so they have surged they're 7-3 in their last 10, but that actually, they've lost 3 in a row because they played the Orioles and that was hard. But they're within 2 games of the Blue Jays for the last AL wildcard spot right now. And they look like a real contender. I don't know if they'll catch the Blue Jays, but they have suddenly put it all together where the offense is doing just enough to help them carry what has been a great pitching staff all year. And so they're pulling a little switcheroo where their trade deadline looked negative and it has been great. Not the trade deadline, we don't know anything about that, but the results after the trade deadline have been great, and the Angels are doing the opposite, as they always do.
To that I say, perhaps they should have added some offense, either at the trade deadline or in the offseason. This is last year when they made the postseason, and it was quite fun. They did not have enough offense. They didn't have enough offense in that last game when they held the Astros off for 18 innings only to lose on a solo shot. So they didn't have enough, and they didn't have enough offseason that whole regular. The offense was the problem. They have Julio Rodriguez, which is very fun, and Cal Raleigh hit that very great home run last year, and he's been pretty good this year too. But they needed a little bit more offense. And if I were the Mariners or the Mariners fans, but mostly the Mariners, because they were mad about the Kendall Graveman thing, and then it happened again with Paul Sewald, I would be upset that they are not adding a little bit more offense.
They keep doing medium levels of trying to add offense, which doesn't tend to work that well. So in the Paul Sewald trade, they added Josh Rojas, third baseman / multi-positional guy, and Dominic Canzone from the Diamondbacks. And Canzone hit a huge home run in the really good Orioles game. They ended up losing that game, but he's been okay for them. They added that. They did Teoscar Hernandez this offseason, but all of these are just kind of a little bit. Just a small bit, and it's not really moving the needle that much. So they're still really reliant on their great rotation to carry them through.
Which is just disappointing because Right. It's yes, they did a little bit. The deadline was in some ways just the wrong time to need offense. There was like very little offense trade at the deadline, but like I just like by let's just sorry, this is going to be really annoying, but like by WRC plus last year, the Mariners they were only 8th. Okay, they're 8th, but still that's not great for a postseason team. And yeah, it's not working out. That I'm gonna say a really like obvious thing right now, which is when you watch the Mariners on their little run, you're like, wow, this is really great. They could really make the postseason. And then you're like, oh, they're only 2.5 back. They could really make the postseason. But I don't know who isn't going to make the postseason out of the current 3 AL wildcard teams, the Rays, the Astros, and the Blue Jays. If anyone, it's the Blue Jays, right? Like it's really hard to imagine either the Rays, who are currently leading the wild card teams, either the Rays or the Astros, who are now playing at full strength and we think could potentially even unseat the Rangers for the division, will miss the postseason entirely. So who are the Mariners unseating?
Well, I will say the Rays are having the most things go wrong outside of the Franco thing. There's Shane McClanahan is out for the year. Their ace. They just have more injury issues right now. But they have built up such a lead. They are 5.5 games clear of the bottom wildcard spot. So it's probably not going to be them. The Astros are the Astros. It could happen, but they're the Astros. But yeah, the Blue Jays, I don't know. Something weird goes wrong for the Blue Jays every year. This year it's Alek Manoah. And their offense just hasn't fully clicked. Bo Bichette has been out for a little bit with a knee injury, although it's not that serious and he's supposed to be back soon. So I do think the Blue Jays are the most vulnerable, obviously, which is they're the last of the group. So yeah, but are they more well-rounded than the Mariners? They should be. Does that always win the day? Not necessarily.
Yes. Again, so like just to recap, it goes Rays, Astros, Blue Jays, currently in the wild card, and then the Mariners, 2 games back. And it does sort of feel like the other teams have fallen away. Behind them, it's the Red Sox, Yankees, and then Angels. So it does feel like it's like, oh, who's it going to be? The Mariners or the Blue Jays down the stretch? There's a 5th team in the AL West, and they're called the Oakland A's. Who are you bandwagoning this week?
I will quickly mention this has a Rangers tie-in. Actually, I'm bandwagoning Clayton Kershaw's year-to-year contract situation. So Clayton Kershaw, Dodgers ace, has taken up this strategy of just signing 1-year deals. It kind of reminds me, in a less famous example, of Tim Wakefield with the Boston Red Sox, the knuckleballer at the end had just like an agreement where they just decided each offseason if he was coming back or not. And it feels a little bit like that with Kershaw, even though he's not that old by pitcher standards. He has reached a level of accomplishment where he just sort of decides every offseason whether he wants to retire to go home and be with his kids and wife more or come back and pitch for the Dodgers. And there's always like, you forget about him. I did a top 10 impending free agents list earlier this week, and it's like, oh, well, Clayton Kershaw's on there because he's technically going to be a free agent. Is anyone really thinking he'll pitch anywhere besides LA? And I would say one team maybe has a shot, and it's the Texas Rangers. Kershaw is from the Dallas area, makes his home in the Dallas area, and is friends with Chris Young, the GM of the Rangers. So if anyone's going to pull Kershaw out of Dodger blue and into a slightly different shade of blue, maybe it will be the Texas Rangers. And I appreciate the intrigue that he offers by going, it's like not intrigue in that it's very boring. It's just like him making a very adult decision over and over again. But I appreciate that he keeps us on our toes about, is this the last Clayton Kershaw start? Is this the last Dodger start for Clayton Kershaw? Is this the moment we're going to talk about when he goes into the Hall of Fame? He keeps doing this, and I have a theory that if the Dodgers win the World Series, that will be it. That the next Dodgers, if they do win the World Series, that he will he will stop and go home. So that is, I'm not necessarily bandwagoning the Dodgers to win the World Series. I actually kind of like this arrangement. I would like it to carry on for a while, just to see how long he will take it.
I will say, having seen the clubhouse for the Texas Rangers for the first time yesterday, it's pretty nice. You should take that into account. Dodger Stadium's kind of old, and this is brand new, and it's really nice. And I talked to Marcus Semien, like I said, and I was like, hey, how you been? What's this like? And he was like, I was like, oh, this is like very swanky. And he was like, this is not where we hang out. We have a lot more of space. And I was like, I know that, but the fact that you felt the need to say it, he's like, we got like a game room, everything. So something for Clayton Kershaw to consider. It's pretty swanky. I don't like the location, and I couldn't find anything that wasn't fried or barbecue to eat. But for baseball players, it seems very nice. Highly recommend.
I'm fairly confident that Clayton Kershaw's home is not in Arlington.
No, my point is just that the ballpark, he would enjoy the clubhouse.
Yes.
He would enjoy the clubhouse. There's a game room. It's very swanky. It's very new. It's very easy to navigate. Everybody seems happy. They're winning, so that's probably why they seem happy. We do not have time to play the have I been to this ballpark or not? But I did go through and figure out which ones, and there are some that I couldn't remember. So I'll try to remember, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Do you by any chance know if I've been to see the Detroit Tigers play at home?
I mean, not since we've been working together. Definitely not.
Okay. Then I think that's one. That's a no. All right. That was one I couldn't remember. I also can't remember if I've been to Wrigley Field, which I feel like I should know. I feel like I should know that one. Have you been?
Know that one? Yes.
Okay. Well, see, people know. That's all we've got for you this week. Thanks to producer John for making this podcast look and sound great. If you're only listening, apparently it also looks great, so you should look at it. Make sure you're following both of us on, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter or Threads or Blue Sky or anywhere else that people are being social online. We got to put Instagram in here. I'm much more active on Instagram these days. Follow us on Instagram. And if you've made it this far, subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and we will be back next week with another episode of The Bandwagon.